The unrelenting Texas sun bore down on the tin roof of a modest ranch-style home tucked away in the quiet outskirts of Willow Creek, a sleepy suburb just west of Houston. Inside, Sarah Monroe stood frozen, her hands trembling as they gripped a crumpled motel receipt. Her vision blurred with unshed tears, but she forced them back, her eyes scanning the damning evidence again and again, as if rereading it might erase the truth. 2 names, 1 room, 1 night, her husband, Nathan Hayes, and a woman she'd never heard of, Lila Harper. The words seared into her mind, each letter a fresh wound. Shock gave way to disbelief, and disbelief ignited into a molten rage that pulsed through her veins, threatening to unravel her entirely. In that moment, the fragile illusion of Sarah's perfect life shattered. The devoted wife, the nurturing mother of 2, vanished, replaced by a woman consumed by betrayal, her heart calcifying with every heartbeat. Her thoughts darkened, twisting toward vengeance, a storm brewing in the quiet of her suburban home. What Sarah couldn't know then was that this discovery would spark a chain of events so shocking it would ripple across the nation, forever altering the tranquil streets of Willow Creek. This is a tale of love, deceit, and a revenge so brutal it would echo far beyond the borders of Texas, leaving an indelible mark on the American consciousness. Sarah Monroe and Nathan Hayes were the epitome of the American dream. High school sweethearts turned suburban success story, they were the pride of their tight-knit community in Willow Creek, a diverse enclave where neighbors knew each other by name. Nathan, with his disarming grin and laid-back charm, had climbed from a grease-stained mechanic to the proud owner of Hayes Auto Repair, a thriving business that kept the town's cars humming. Sarah, sharp-witted and fiercely driven, had recently been promoted to head nurse at Willow Creek Medical Center, her calm competence a beacon in the chaos of the ER. Their home on Maple Drive was modest but pristine, filled with the warmth of family dinners and the joyful chaos of their children, 8-year-old Ethan and 6-year-old Mia. To the outside world, the Hayes family was a postcard of suburban bliss. Weekends found them at the Willow Creek Community Pool, where Nathan taught Ethan and Mia to dive while Sarah watched from the sidelines, her laughter mingling with the summer breeze. Their annual 4th of July barbecue was legendary, Nathan's slow-smoked brisket drawing neighbors from blocks away. They were pillars of the community, always ready with a helping hand or a kind word. But beneath the polished surface, cracks had begun to form, invisible to the adoring eyes of Willow Creek. For months, the weight of demanding careers and the relentless demands of parenthood had strained their marriage. Conversations that once sparkled with ease now felt stilted, burdened by unspoken frustrations. The passion that had defined their early years had dulled into perfunctory kisses and polite small talk. Sarah noticed Nathan's growing distance, late nights at the shop, a faint whiff of unfamiliar perfume clinging to his clothes. When she questioned him, he'd flash that easy smile and shrug it off, blaming an overzealous customer or a long day. Desperate to hold her family together, Sarah swallowed her doubts, but they festered, a quiet poison in her heart. Then, during one of Nathan's so-called weekend fishing trips, with buddies Sarah had never met, the truth came crashing down. While sorting laundry, her fingers brushed against a folded slip of paper in the pocket of Nathan's denim jacket. Her breath caught as she unfolded it, the words blurring before her eyes, Nathan Hayes and Lila Harper, 1 night, 1 room at a motel just outside town. The receipt was a guillotine, severing the life she'd known. In that instant, Sarah's world imploded, and the woman who had weathered every storm with grace made a silent vow: she would not weep, she would not beg. She would make them pay. Lila prided herself on her integrity, the idea of being the other woman repulsed her. Sensing her hesitation, Nathan opened up, confessing the strain in his marriage, the feeling of being unseen and unappreciated. His words stirred something in Lila, who was grappling with her own isolation in Willow Creek. She tried to keep her distance, but the pull between them was undeniable. What began as innocent conversation soon deepened into lingering glances, late-night texts, and stolen moments. Guilt shadowed every interaction, but when she looked into Nathan's eyes, her resolve crumbled. Their affair ignited slowly, a brush of hands, a shared coffee in a quiet diner, a kiss stolen in the shadows of a parking lot. To Nathan, Lila was a breath of fresh air, vibrant and unburdened, a stark contrast to the routine that had dulled his marriage. With her, he could escape the pressures of bills, a struggling business, and the weight of fatherhood. But passion came at a cost. Nathan's lies multiplied, more fishing trips, more late nights at the shop. Lila, too, withdrew from her new friends, weaving excuses to keep her weekends free for him. The motel receipt, the smoking gun Sarah would later find, marked their first night together. Until then, they'd kept their encounters restrained, limited to fleeting touches and whispered promises. But that night, consumed by months of longing, they crossed a line. It was meant to be a single lapse, a moment of weakness, but that one night would unravel 3 lives and leave Willow Creek reeling. As Lila lay in Nathan's arms in the dim glow of the motel room, guilt mingled with the fading warmth of their intimacy. "We can't keep doing this," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Nathan pulled her closer, his breath warm against her skin. "I know," he murmured, "but I don't know how to let you go." Neither could have foreseen the devastation their choices would unleash. The day Sarah's world collapse began like any other. She rose before dawn, kissed her sleeping children, and headed to the hospital for a grueling shift. Suspicion had been a constant companion for weeks, each late night and flimsy excuse tightening the knot in her chest, but she buried it, focusing on her patients. It wasn't until she returned home that evening, exhausted and aching, that something felt wrong. Nathan's truck was in the driveway, but the house was unnaturally still, no clatter of dishes, no laughter from Ethan or Mia, no hum of the TV. "Nathan," she called, her voice echoing in the silence. "Kids." A note sat on the kitchen counter, written in Nathan's familiar scrawl, "Took the kids to Mom's for the night. Thought you could use a break after your shift. Love, N." On another day, Sarah might have been touched, but tonight, the gesture felt hollow, a mask for something darker. Nathan had been unusually attentive lately, cooking dinner, running errands, massaging her shoulders. It was too perfect, too calculated. Driven by a gut instinct she couldn't name, Sarah moved to their bedroom, her steps deliberate. She stood in the doorway, her eyes tracing the familiar contours of the room, their sanctuary for over a decade. How many nights had they lain here, sharing dreams in the dark? How many mornings had begun with his arms around her? Her gaze fell on Nathan's side of the closet. Almost without thinking, her hand reached for his favorite jacket, the scent of his cologne still lingering in the fabric. Her fingers brushed against something unfamiliar, a folded piece of paper. Her heart stuttered as she pulled it out, dread pooling in her stomach. She unfolded it slowly, each second stretching into eternity. There it was, in stark black and white, Nathan Hayes and Lila Harper, 1 room, 1 night. The receipt burned in her hands, a physical manifestation of her worst fears. Her knees buckled, and she sank to the floor, clutching the paper to her chest as if it could somehow contain the pain tearing through her. Time lost meaning as Sarah sat there, the receipt a cruel anchor to reality. Every lie, every late night, every moment she'd forced herself to trust him replayed in her mind, a relentless assault. Outside, the Texas sun dipped below the horizon, leaving the room in shadow. Eventually, she rose, her legs unsteady, and made her way to the kitchen. She poured a glass of Merlot, her hands still trembling, and as the wine warmed her throat, a strange calm settled over her. The grief remained, but it was joined by something sharper, colder, rage. Sarah's thoughts turned to Lila Harper, the woman whose name had shattered her world. Who was she? What did she look like? What did she have that Sarah lacked? Setting down her glass, Sarah opened her laptop with a purpose she hadn't felt in months. Willow Creek was small, and Lila Harper wasn't hard to find. Her social media profile loaded, and Sarah's breath caught. There she was, young, stunning, her smile radiant in every photo. Each image was a dagger, Lila at the beach, her lithe frame glowing in the sun, Lila at a local coffee shop, her laughter frozen in time, Lila volunteering at a community event, her kindness practically leaping off the screen. As Sarah scrolled, something inside her hardened, the last vestiges of the trusting wife she'd been crumbling to ash. She thought of the years she'd given Nathan, the late nights she'd worked so he could build his business, the dreams she'd set aside, the family she'd held together through sheer will. She thought of Ethan and Mia, innocent victims of their father's deceit, and of their community, the neighbors who'd soon whisper behind their hands. As the clock ticked past midnight, the house cloaked in silence, Sarah made her decision. She would not be the discarded wife, pitted and broken. She would have her revenge, and it would be a reckoning that would sear itself into the souls of Nathan Hayes and Lila Harper. Closing her laptop, a plan took shape, bold, dangerous, and utterly ruthless. A grim smile curved her lips as she imagined the moment Nathan would realize the cost of his betrayal. In the days that followed, Sarah moved through life with the precision of a woman possessed. To the outside world, she was the same, doting mother, skilled nurse, friendly neighbor. But beneath that facade, her mind churned with fury and calculation. She watched Nathan with new eyes, every lie and subtle shift in his routine standing out like a beacon. She noticed the way he lingered over his phone, smirking at messages he hid from her view, the unfamiliar cologne that clung to his skin, the sudden care he took with his appearance, pressed shirts, fresh shaves, haircuts more frequent than necessary. Each detail was a spark to her growing fire. But Sarah didn't act on impulse. Revenge, she knew, demanded patience and strategy. She played the role of the unsuspecting wife flawlessly, serving dinners with a smile, brushing soft kisses against his cheek. Nathan had no inkling that the woman beside him was laying the foundation for his destruction. Her first move was to gather evidence. Drawing on skills honed in the high-stakes world of nursing, spotting inconsistencies, managing chaos, Sarah began piecing together the truth of Nathan and Lila's affair. She tracked his movements, noting patterns in his late nights and emergency meetings. She scoured bank statements, uncovering small, unexplained cash withdrawals. But knowing wasn't enough. She needed to see it. On a sweltering Tuesday, Sarah called in sick to work for the first time in her career. Dressed in a plain hoodie and sunglasses, she positioned herself in a diner across from Hayes Auto Repair, her heart pounding as she stirred the same cup of coffee endlessly. Time crawled, doubt gnawing at her resolve. Just as she began to think she'd wasted her chance, Lila appeared, stunning, confident, her heels clicking as she crossed the street and entered the shop. Sarah's breath hitched. 15 minutes later, Nathan emerged, locking the shop in the middle of the day. He and Lila walked to his truck, hand in hand, their intimacy unmistakable. They weren't sneaking around, they were lovers, entwined in a world that excluded Sarah entirely. As they drove off, Sarah felt a tidal wave of emotions, vindication, devastation, fury. The truth was no longer a suspicion but a raw, undeniable wound. That night, as she lay beside her sleeping husband, the final pieces of her plan clicked into place. It would require precision, nerve, and a ruthlessness she hadn't known she possessed. But as she pictured Nathan and Lila together, basking in their stolen moments, Sarah knew she was capable of anything. Her preparations intensified. She made innocuous purchases, a new set of kitchen knives, a bottle of potent sleeping pills, a burner phone. Late at night, while Nathan slept, she studied human anatomy, focusing on the male reproductive system with a clinical detachment that belied her true intent. But Sarah didn't stop at logistics. She crafted an alibi with chilling foresight, confiding in friends about tension in her marriage, planting seeds of doubt about Nathan's fidelity. She began a diary, filling it with fabricated accounts of arguments and her growing unease, a paper trail that would later seem eerily prescient. As the day of reckoning neared, a strange calm enveloped her. The initial agony of betrayal had crystallized into resolve. She was no longer Nathan's wife, no longer a victim. She was the architect of their downfall, and she would write the final chapter in blood. The night before her plan unfolded, Sarah tucked Ethan and Mia into bed with extra care, kissing their foreheads and breathing in their innocence. Doubt flickered, could she risk their future, her freedom, for revenge? But the image of Nathan and Lila, tangled in their betrayal, snuffed out her hesitation. There was no turning back. The morning dawned bright, a perfect Texas day masking the darkness beneath. Sarah moved through her routine with mechanical precision, preparing breakfast, packing lunches, smiling for her children. Nathan kissed her cheek before heading to work, oblivious to the storm gathering around him. Once his truck vanished down Maple Drive, Sarah sprang into action. She changed into a nondescript outfit, hoodie, jeans, a baseball cap, and grabbed a duffel bag containing her tools, a sharpened knife, a vial of chloroform acquired through shadowy means, and latex gloves. Her first stop was Nathan's shop, where she slipped into his office under the guise of dropping off lunch. With steady hands, she installed a tracking app on his phone, then left without a word. Next, she trailed Lila to her workplace, a small physical therapy clinic, memorizing every detail, the staff, the security, the schedule. Each observation was a weapon, each detail a thread in her intricate web. As evening fell, her phone pinged. The tracking app showed Nathan's truck heading to Lila's apartment. Sarah exhaled, her resolve hardening. It was time. She slipped into the night, her heart pounding as she approached Lila's complex. Positioning herself in a shadowed alcove near the apartment door, she waited, her nerves taut but her focus unwavering. Soon, she heard laughter, light, carefree, and the murmur of intimate voices. Peering around the corner, she saw them, Nathan and Lila, wrapped in each other, their bodies pressed close as if the world didn't exist. The sight was a fresh wound, fueling her rage. As Lila fumbled with her keys, distracted by Nathan's whispers, Sarah struck. In one fluid motion, she pressed a chloroform-soaked cloth over Lila's face. Lila's eyes widened in shock before fluttering shut, her body slumping. Nathan froze, his mouth opening to scream, but Sarah was faster, the knife flashing as she pressed it to his throat. Not a sound, she hissed, her voice a chilling stranger's. Terrified, Nathan complied, helping her drag Lila's unconscious form into the apartment. The door closed with a soft thud, and reality tilted. The weight of her actions crashed over Sarah, but it was too late to turn back. She bound Lila to a chair with zip ties, then turned to Nathan, who stood paralyzed, his face a mask of horror. "Why?" she whispered, the word breaking with the weight of her pain. Nathan's mouth worked soundlessly, his eyes darting between Sarah and Lila. "I trusted you," she said, her voice rising, each word a blade. "I gave you everything, my love, our children, our life, and this is how you repay me?" She stepped forward, and Nathan stumbled back, collapsing onto the bed where he'd betrayed her. What happened next was a blur of rage and anguish. The knife slashed through the air, Nathan's screams shattering the silence. Blood stained the sheets crimson, and when the haze cleared, Sarah stood over him, the knife trembling in her hand. Nathan lay curled in agony, sobbing, clutching his groin. She had done it, she had made him pay. But the victory was hollow. The knife slipped from her fingers, clattering to the floor, the sound snapping her back to reality. What had she done? This wasn't justice, it was madness, irreversible and brutal. In the living room, Lila stirred, her groggy murmurs signaling her return to consciousness. Panic seized Sarah. There was no escape, no way to undo the horror. As Nathan's moans and Lila's confused whispers filled the apartment, Sarah reached for her phone with shaking hands and dialed 911. "I need help," she whispered to the operator, her voice barely audible. "I've done something terrible." As she gave the address, her legs gave out, and she sank to the floor, the adrenaline draining from her body. The rage that had driven her was gone, replaced by a hollow emptiness. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder as footsteps thundered toward the apartment. Sarah closed her eyes, waiting for the inevitable. She had wanted revenge, wanted Nathan and Lila to feel her pain, but in the end, she was the one who would pay the steepest price. The aftermath was a whirlwind of chaos. The media descended on Willow Creek like vultures, the story of Sarah Monroe's shocking revenge dominating headlines. Scorned wife's brutal vengeance, the tabloids screamed, her mugshot, an anguished, pale face, plastered across screens and newspapers. Public opinion fractured, some saw Sarah as a woman broken by betrayal, others as a cold-blooded monster. Talk shows and Reddit threads buzzed with debates, amateur sleuths and armchair psychologists dissecting her every move. For Nathan, the physical pain was only the beginning. From his hospital bed, under police watch, he faced the public humiliation of his affair laid bare. Once a respected businessman, he was now a pariah, his reputation in tatters. Lila, though physically unharmed, was shattered. Nightmares and panic attacks haunted her, and she closed her clinic, retreating from Willow Creek and the community she'd once loved. But it was Ethan and Mia who bore the deepest wounds. In one night, their world collapsed, mother in jail, father hospitalized, they were thrust into the care of grandparents struggling to shield them from the media storm. The trial was a spectacle, drawing journalists and curious onlookers to the Houston courthouse. Sarah, gaunt and hollow-eyed, sat silently as prosecutors painted her as a calculating predator, her diary and purchase history damning evidence of premeditation. Her defense argued she'd been emotionally abused, pushed beyond endurance. Throughout, Sarah remained mute, offering no testimony, no pleas. The fire that had driven her was gone, leaving only regret. When the verdict came, guilty of aggravated assault with intent, the courtroom gasped. The judge, acknowledging the betrayal that sparked her actions, sentenced her to 7 years, with parole possible after 4. For Sarah, the sentence was secondary, her true punishment was the wreckage she'd left behind. In the years that followed, the Hayes case became a cultural touchstone, sparking debates about infidelity, mental health, and the line between justice and revenge. Nathan, scarred physically and emotionally, struggled to rebuild his life and reconnect with his children, haunted by whispers wherever he went. Lila vanished, some saying she returned to Austin, others claiming she left the country to escape the stigma. Ethan and Mia, caught in the crossfire, faced a childhood marked by trauma, their innocence stolen by their parents' choices. In prison, Sarah's rage gave way to remorse. Her cell walls were lined with photos of Ethan and Mia, their faces a daily reminder of her failure. She volunteered in the prison infirmary, finding solace in small acts of kindness. The night before her parole after 4 years, she sat by her cell window, moonlight filtering through the bars, and thought of her children, their tiny hands, their laughter. She'd lost so much, but she was still here. Upon her release, Sarah stepped into a Willow Creek that had moved on. Her parents and now teenage children waited at the prison gates, their reunion tearful and strained. Ethan and Mia had grown, their eyes holding love but also wariness. Nathan was absent, their divorce finalized during her incarceration. Lila was a ghost, her whereabouts unknown. Sarah's nursing license was gone, her reputation ruined, and old friends avoided her. Yet, slowly, she began to rebuild, working at a local charity where her compassion found purpose. Therapy helped her unravel the pain that had consumed her, and she poured her heart into reconnecting with her children, cherishing small victories, a braid for Mia, a movie night with Ethan. One afternoon, Sarah stood outside what had once been Nathan's shop, now a trendy coffee house. Staring at the spot where she'd watched her life unravel, she expected rage, but found peace instead. The betrayal, the pain, belonged to another version of her. In the coffeehouse window, her reflection showed a woman older, wearier, but resilient, forged in fire yet still standing. She couldn't undo the past, but she could shape her future. With each step down the familiar streets of Willow Creek, Sarah walked not just away from her pain, but toward redemption, a future defined not by vengeance, but by hope, resilience, and the quiet strength to begin again.